Gentlemen, ladies, and anyone in between, I welcome you all to part 2 of what's to debut from Daiwa at this year's 2018 Icast. And for you guys out there that tuned into part 1, it focused mainly on reels and lures. Part 2 is going to focus on rods and accessories, and I'll tell you what, guys, there are a ton of sticks coming out. And for you guys out there not familiar with what Icast is, it's a trade show where the manufacturers get to play meet and greet with the retailers and marketers and debut all their new products for the upcoming year. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start off mainly with what I'm most excited about, and then later on through the video, it's going to be more of just going down the line. So, starting off with one of the rods I'm most excited about, it's got to be the 8'6" Proteus INSHORE conventional rod. It's a medium heavy. I don't know how heavy of a weight it can throw, but judging by its line ratings and some other rods that I'm familiar with, it'll probably be that 3-ounce max range, maybe even 4. I'm a sucker for longer conventional rods, and this has my name written all over it. Now, next up we have the Saltist INSHORE West Coast, which is a new series, and I'll tell you what, it's pretty interesting. In Japan, they have sea bass rods, which are pretty much exactly what this is. They're longer, lighter weight rods that are capable of throwing 1/2 ounce and 3/4 ounce baits long distances. And it's a growing segment here stateside, and I know in the Northeast, a lot of guys out there like throwing, light jigs early spring for striped bass, and they really only could use salmon steelhead rods because that's the only rods stateside that have that kind of length. Now we have these. So if you're going to tip a jig with a Kokoho minnow and throw it off the sod banks early spring when the water's cold, or kind of do that whole jetty probing thing, this might be a nice little series to pick up. This is going to be interesting to see how this market grows. It's a new segment that's been growing, so it's really cool to see Daiwa debuting a series with this many models in it. So with that being said, let's move right along to the Proteus Wind Grip saltwater rods. Now, for you guys out there who haven't yet fished a rod equipped with one of these fancy tennis grip style wraps, I'll tell you what, they're actually worth it. For me personally, I've been fishing one for about a year and a half on a black hole 9'6" Cape Cod Striper Nano. And when you really start getting into fish, you're lipping fish, you're releasing them, your hands are covered in slime, you're wiping them off on your waders, you're wiping them off on a rag, you're reaching over the gunnel of the boat, rinsing your hands off in the water, you still get fish slime on the rods. Now, most of us are fishing EVA grips or, that X-Flock heat shrink. When that fish slime dries, once you get it wet, it kind of becomes slippery again. You don't get that with the wind grips. I mean, yeah, we all have golf clubs and tennis rackets where the grips go bad and you got to replace them. I think you can actually rewrap these rods. I think they sell a kit. But it's kind of cool to see that they put it on a rod. So you combine all that with what appears to be some fancy new marketing jargon they shoved in the blanks along with some new components. And you know what? With all that being said, if they keep the action similar to some of the original Proteus rods, I'll be happy. So with all that being said, let's move right along. Next up, you have the Proteus popping stick, which, as far as I'm concerned, I don't remember ever seeing a dedicated tuna popping rod from Daiwa come stateside. I believe they had the Saltiga line overseas, and I got to tell you guys, if you're looking for a popping rod, handle it in person. I don't know anything about this rod other than the picture. What I can say is, looking at the picture, it doesn't look like that foregrip is the diameter of a beer can, which a lot of the budget-minded tuna popping rods, for whatever reason, are. Now, whether you wear gloves or not, some of these popping rods, the foregrips, are so huge that if you wear gloves, you can barely get your hands around it. So, to me, this looks like it has a little bit smaller diameter. It looks to be a one-piece stick. And again, the other thing about tuna popping rods, you got to see the action. You look at all these tuna jigging rods where the first half of the rod is almost sacrificial. That way it loads up real nice so you're not pulling on a 7-foot lever. Popping rods, for whatever reason, when they're in the $200 price range, they only fold up about 1.5 feet from the tip, some of them, on a 100-pound tuna with a 25-pound drag or a 20-pound drag. So you got to really pull on them in person. I have no idea what this is going to be like. I wish they came up with this rod over a year ago because I would already have it in my quiver. But with that being said, I'm excited to see this rod in person, and I may well pick it up. And again, handle tuna popping rods in person, because you don't always get that opportunity to fire off for topwater tuna, and you want to have a rod that's comfortable to load, comfortable to pull on, and get those fish to the boat when you do have the opportunity. Next up, we have the 60 Tactical Front Load Box. Now, for you guys out there that are familiar with the Hippo Ranger, that's the bag that I've been using for about 20 years now, and it's been on its last legs for the past decade, you know, putting in new Velcro and all that kind of crap. So to say that I'm in the market for a box like this is an understatement. The one thing that's nice about this, that front flap, if you're a shark fisherman, you can put your shark leaders in their individual bags, put it in that front flap. You can put all your tuna jigs, your terminal gear in all the boxes. You can put reels, sunglasses, you know, sunglass wipes, sunscreen, all that crap in the top pouch, and you'll be good to go. Keep all your pliers and shit in there too. So this looks like a nice addition to a segment that is greatly lacking, in my opinion, because in the 15 years I've been looking for a replacement, just because I haven't come across one. So for, I think, 120 bucks, 110 bucks, which was what I paid for my Hippo Ranger back in '99, I'm in. Just take my money, okay? Now, next up, we have a brand new series of rod called KAGE. Now, me personally, I think Daiwa is aiming for these rods to be their belle of the ball at Icast, and I'll tell you what, they look pretty. And if you look at the cork, it's been a long time since we've had quality cork. You even look at St. Croix and G. Loomis, there's a lot of filler. You look at some of the budget rods that are coming out more recently, and they're actually not bad. The cork quality has come up some. And when I say Loomis and St. Croix, their stuff is getting better too, but 5-6 years ago, it was pretty rough for a while. Now, I'm not sure what these rods are all about. They're bass rods. They look to include all your standard bass rod lengths with a heavy emphasis on swim bait rods, which is kind of cool. I do notice that they're missing a 7'6" spinning rod, which they released in a few other series, which is kind of strange. But take a look at the specs, the prices, you'll see them on the right-hand side. And I'll tell you what, I'll probably end up picking one up just to see what they're all about. Now here we have brand spanking new for 2018, a fully redesigned series of Tatula rods. Now the first thing you notice is the cork, and that seems to be a trend. A lot of the rods that are coming out, Daiwa seems to be paying extra attention to the grip material and the reel seats and the grips and all that kind of jazz, which is cool, because when you look at all the rods out there at the $150 price range, a lot of the blanks are similar, the actions are somewhat similar, some can get kind of generic. What I'm mainly talking about are your G. Loomis, your St. Croix, your Shimano, your Daiwa, and your Kistler rods. They all generally have more tailored actions and aren't like lifeless and generic, is the best way to put it. And when you look at some of the offerings and their reel seats, Daiwa and Shimano, in my opinion, beat everybody hands down. Everybody else seems to use Fuji components because Fuji's a cool sticker to put on a rod, when in actuality their barrel reel seats are kind of lacking. So with that being said, you have a brand new series of Tatula rods, and if you look, the last rod listed on the chart, the 7'6" medium light medium, that's the rod in the Daiwa AGS lineup that I've been using for the past 2 years, and it literally has replaced multiple spinning rods. So I'm curious to see if that Tatula 7'6" has a similar action, because if it does, at the price point that Tatula rods are going to be coming in at, it's going to be a home run. Now, it looks like here that Daiwa is expanding upon their Tatula Elite series of rods, and for you guys out there not familiar with them, and admittedly I'm not all that familiar with them myself, but they're the silver series of rods that incorporate the carbon fiber framed AGS guides. And I'll tell you what, as somebody who owns the Daiwa AGS rods and a few of them, I'm a believer in these fancy schmancy carbon fiber frame guides. Regardless of what Bass Pro name is slapped on the rod, that means nothing to me. But the carbon fiber guides, if you've ever fished an interline rod before, the sound and feel of the line coming through the blank, it has a different feel and a different sound than, say, even a titanium frame Torzite guide or a recoil frame guide, where I don't know if it's the same material or a similar material as the blank, kind of drawing that vibration through the guide into the blank to your hand. And a lot of guys, they say certain guides are more sensitive, but is a guide more sensitive if you're feeling and hearing the braid, or is it transmitting the bite better from the tip? That's what you got to kind of differentiate. And a lot of times those big heavy guide inserts, dull the actual feel coming from the rod tip, but you can feel the braid coming through the line more because they vibrate. And a lot of times when they vibrate, vibration's a dampener. You want to kind of isolate it. And these AGS rod guides are very rigid. They don't bend, they don't flex, they don't vibrate. It all goes to the blank. So, what am I getting at? I think that carbon fiber everything is cool. So moving right along, $300 price point is probably going to be the cheapest you're going to get AGS guides for the near future, and I like them. Now it looks like here we have a new series of jigging rods coming out, and while I like the look of the spinning rod, and it's all about the handle and all about the action, and I'm looking at the conventional rod, and I like that taper in the rear grip. I have a Steez XT swimbait rod with that kind of, tapered in the middle, so when you're pit tucking it, it doesn't cut off your circulation when you're gripping the butt of the rod with your armpit. But I look at the foregrip, and it looks a little small, and it looks to incorporate the reel seat lock nut. And if you're fishing a conventional and you're gripping the foregrip, you might be loosening up that reel seat as you're retrieving or fighting a fish or holding on. So I guess it's kind of something you got to see in person. I don't think it tightens up from the rear. I mean, it looks, you see what I'm seeing. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to play out. The slim foregrip on the spin jigging rod looks really nice. And beyond that, I have no idea. But I'm looking forward to seeing them in person. And they're priced at around $100, which has been the Travala territory for the last decade. And I guess we'll have to see how these pan out. Now here we have a new series of back bay inshore rods that are actually called back bay inshore rods because originality, and they're aimed to complement their new Saltist back bay spinning reels that are offered in a 3 and a 4,000 size. And I'll tell you what, I had the opportunity to pull on one of the lighter rods earlier this winter at one of the saltwater shows, and they had some balls to them. So whether or not they're really going to do well up here in the Northeast, targeting large stripers, if you look at their lure ratings, a lot of guys are throwing 3 and 4 ounce plugs. I'm not sure how well they'll be suited to that, but I'm willing to bet the lighter ones are going to be great for the guys, bottom bouncing for fluke. So with that being said, that about wraps up all the rods and accessories that I'm excited about seeing debuted at this year's Icast. And these next 15 or so items, I'm just going to let run through about 25-30 seconds a clip. And for you guys that are still with me, I thank you for every second of every minute you guys spend here, because without you, I would not be here. And for you guys that are still with me that haven't or are not yet subscribed to my channel, do me a favor, check out some of the other videos that I've put out. I think you'll find I do things quite a bit differently. And until next time, guys, tight lines, enjoy, and I'll see you soon.